Hello and welcome to Anatomy of Family. I'm your host, Melanie Studley.
What's up, guys? My name is Seth Studley. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and today we're talking about parenting each kid differently.
Let's go.
So right before then, you said my breath smelled good because it smelled like International House of Pancakes sausage, and I don't understand that.
Well, when you prayed for us, it smelled great. Made me kind of hungry.
Okay.
It was funny. Anyway, let's dive into today's topic. We're talking about parenting each kid differently, and this is a parenting concept I've honestly not really heard many people talk about. Mm-hmm. I would love to know, it was your choice of topic, so I'd love you to start the thing off.
Okay, so some context. If you've listened to the show for a minute, we have 3 kids, age 13, now 12. One just turned 12 yesterday. And then we have a soon-to-be 9-year-old little baby, a little girl. And our kid just had a birthday party, right? And I was thinking of this as something I've known forever, being a parent and a therapist. And it was just a really stark kind of contrast of, wait a minute, we got to do this kid's birthday differently. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we are leaning into his strengths. It's what we should always do as parents, and it's taken us a while to kind of get there. Maybe I should reframe that and say it's taken me a while to get there.
Thank you
right?
so much for saying that.
And if we think about it, if you listen to Anatomy of Marriage or Anatomy of Family or anything that we do, we talk about family of origin a lot, and we talk about Seth, the person of Seth, is his own individuated, differentiated Enneagram type number personality, right? I am very individual. Mm-hmm. So, as parents, where do we find the liberty? I think it's just assumptions and things that we don't even think about. Why do we think it's okay to parent our kid just in a blanket
You mean all
thing?
of our kids the same way?
Right.
Why
we're talking to them the same. We give them the same rewards. Maybe we punish them the same. We teach them the same. And that's not how it works. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You follow what I'm laying down here?
I do. And I think it's important because often we are taught as parents the basics of like communication or talk to your kids like this. Mm-hmm. And that's great. Like knowing not to scream at your kid is great. Knowing to reward them is great. But each kid has a different set of values, which is super weird because they're all, Joyce Meyer puts it my favorite way ever. She's like, how can you have all these different kids and they all seem so different, but they all came from the same place,
right?
Which is like my favorite.
It's like an apple tree growing grapes and strawberries.
Oranges.
Right.
And it's true because although we have the same set of rules for all of our children, we're going to be respectful and loving and teach them boundaries and give them chores and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Those same sets of rules cannot be delivered the same way to each child with success.
Right. So parents out there, I wish somebody had told me this or I read it in a book before. The sooner that you can start parenting to each kid's strengths, the better results you will have. Mm-hmm. And I believe that you will grow closer relationships with your kid, right?
Absolutely.
So let's go back to the birthday party yesterday. Mm-hmm. It was great, but we were all going into it. There was some anxiety around it because one of our kids has a little bit higher anxiety than the other kids. And we are tailoring what he needs to that.
Well,
not just So if you grew up in the South, like I did, 80s and 90s and stuff like that, you were like,
70s.
Late 70s. Oh, just get over it. This is what we're doing. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I just had to go with the flow, right? Of everything, which is fine. Sometimes that works. That worked for me because I'm kind of like that anyway. But it doesn't work for our kids. So,
I don't know. I don't know if it worked for you. I'll be honest. I think
tell me about that.
Created some patterns in you like that. So here's a good example, and don't get upset about this because it was 100 years ago when you were a child.
Telling the listeners not to get upset, or me right now to get upset.
And your mom, when you were a kid, you would like have to go pick the switch in which you would get smacked with.
Oh yeah,
right. So like if Seth
I bet a lot of listeners can relate to that. You knew that you were in trouble. Mom came home. Me and my brother are up on the roof.
Lighting the barn on fire.
And she's like, you go get your switch. And we're like, oh no, we did it. We're in for it, right? We can joke about it now, but that's a thing.
It's crazy to me to think about. Yeah. But I honestly think that you had almost like the ability to just I don't know, be light and easy in relational stuff is kind of like knocked out of you, I think. Because you can be silly, you can be goofy in a sense that you know it's safe. Like you can be funny if it's not important, but you have a tendency to not be able to share. And I think it's like an Enneagram 9 thing as well. But you can't easily share your preferences without feeling like I'm going to get my butt kicked or no one will care anyway, or she's not going to care. So I think that way that you were raised actually compounded some of your Enneagram stuff.
Interesting.
That's just my take on it. But anyway.
Well, you're wrong. Moving on. No, just kidding. No, that's a good insight. But we wanted to give you guys 3 quick and easy tips to at least get some thinking around this, right? And I go back to, you are very different than I am.
I'm
right?
very wise. Yes.
Yes.
Keep talking.
You're very wise. So just as different as you are from your spouse, whoever's listening, understand that your kids are different too, right? And number 1, all your kids are not the same. You just have to accept that. Like, you really do. So one of our kids is fairly easygoing, right?
Which one?
I'm not going to use names. They're fairly easygoing. And one of the other kids are just fun and goofy and, again, easygoing. But another kid, his disposition is like, I'm going to challenge this, and I have a bunch of questions. I am thinking, I am like, wait a minute, and you can't get away with anything. We've talked about that before, right?
Yeah.
So understanding, point number 1, all your kids are not the same. And you're like, well, duh, Seth, of course they're not. Let's get deeper into that, right?
Right.
They're not the same. They aren't going to hear the same lesson the same way. Some things that hurt their feelings or make them happy will be very different than their brother or sister. And then just accepting that. And this comes around also with kids who have special needs, right? I've had cousins who have had autism and other things going on. We have a nephew who has autism as well. And that is a really, let's just be real, that is a really big surprise. It's a huge adjustment when you think, oh, our baby boy, our baby girl has autism or some other health issue or something that automatically makes them different from other folks.
It's really easy to see how they're different, but sometimes it's very hard to see how some kids that seem, I mean, our boys seem like twins. They look identical. Even our neighbor who we've known for 8 years can still not tell them apart.
Right.
And he sees them every day. And so I think it is very hard sometimes when we don't take the time to acknowledge that our kids are different, even when they seem like they should be all the same. And something that's important there with the difference of our boys alone, they're the 12 and 13-year-olds. So a chore chart, for example, our oldest, Mariner, you give him a chore chart, he's got it done in 8 minutes. He's made his checks perfectly. They could not be, like, he will erase one if it's slightly crooked. He'd redo them all perfectly. His bed is made every day. His room is very tidy. His shoes are organized. Like, legit, this kid's room is never, ever, ever messy, and he prides himself on that. Our other kid, Tuff, who you heard on the show a while back, Tuff's room is always messy. It's like, he's very much like you. Which I want to talk to the Enneagram lady about.
It reminded me of your room when we were dating.
For sure. When we were dating,
I was a hurricane.
Yeah, but it was like fun. A hurricane of fun.
A fun pile of dirty laundry, yeah.
But I think that it's interesting because in order to understand, or when we understand that our children really are different, even if they look the same, seem like they should be the same, we are attuning to each individual child's needs, right? That attunement concept is the I see you feeling. I see, Mariner, that you love tidy checklists and you love to have all your schoolwork in order and you love to check on your grades. I see, Tuff, that you love to collect boxes and make art out of absolutely everything and you never want to throw anything away. And it's a challenge for parents because we want the world to be like how we want it. That's why couples fight with each other. Right. I want Seth to want what I want. I want him to eat what I want to eat.
Representational differences.
That's right.
Right.
And so
when you're jumping ahead to number 3. Stop. So I'm going to pause you for a minute, okay? Ugh. So the importance of just starting here, right? All your kids are not the same. You have to accept that. And you might be able to get a head start on this if you've listened to Anatomy of Marriage for any minute and go, oh, my spouse is not the same as me.
Right.
And I love them and I accept them. Representational differences, right? So point number 2, talk to your spouse about your kids' differences, right? Now, this is where you get into the spousal relationship part because I have a preference of parenting. Of course, that's going to come from family of origin.
Right.
Melanie does too.
Let's talk about that for a split second.
Okay.
That we tend to want to parent like we were parented,
Exact.
even if we don't like it or didn't like it as a kid, because we go to what we know. And as parents, that's huge. I mean, I had a perfect example is I walk with my best friends, you know, we walk all the time. And my one friend is from a different part of the world. And she was saying in her family, they have traditions on birthdays. On birthdays, you wake up. I mean, if you get a birthday card in the mail like a week before your birthday, you open it. Of course you do. Duh. And on the birthday morning, you get all your gifts. That's your party right when you wake up.
Oh, wow.
But her husband was like, no, you cannot open a card early. And the party starts at 7:30. And she's like, what? And they had a kid. This was years ago. But when they had their child, they were like, she even said, she's like, I don't care. We're not doing it his way. We're doing it my way, which is funny but just so that you know, you are going to be drawn almost like you don't, it's invisible. It's invisibly drawn to what you grew up with. It's going to feel right? Like it feels right to parent like that. You wanted to do corporal punishment. I didn't. I thought you would laugh at that. You spanked the kids. I did not want to spank the kids. So it was sort of that even in itself is a big deal, that your family of origin is going to pull you toward the type of parenting that you're going to naturally be drawn to.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't think about it.
And there will be one parent whose preferences will come out as stronger, right? Like in your friends, I don't care what he did for birthday parties. We're doing it this way, right? And there's probably going to be some arguments about things like that, especially things around punishment or rewards or what do we do? Do we sit down at the table? Do we eat? You know, what's the routine like? Because you go to what you know, and trust me, you will wake up one day and go, oh, wait a minute, I've been parenting like I was parented, and I really hated it when my mom did XYZ, or when my dad just came in and like, you know, kind of shook up the world or whatever. Or you can say, you know what? My mom was really kind to me and she listened to me, XYZ, or my dad was really kind and all this stuff. And I'm trying to really, really do that. Remember, you are creating, we say this on stage all the time, you are creating the family of origin for your kid right now. That's big, right? Okay. Number 2, I already said number 2, but I'll reiterate. Talk to your spouse about your kids' differences.
Right.
So a problem shared is a problem halved. Hey, Melanie, I'm really having trouble with Hattie and trying to get her to brush her teeth. How, do you have any insight onto this? Rather than me just saying, okay, come on, brush your teeth, turn electronics off, blah, blah, brush your teeth now, brush your teeth now. That's not going to work for our kid. So I'm going to ask my spouse, help me out.
Right.
Kind of drowning over here. Help me out. What do you think we should do? And let's co-create a plan.
Yes, yeah.
So here's another thing, and I saw this in my private practice all the time. Couples would come in, a mom or dad, and say, hey, this is really messing us up. He says he wants to do it this way. I say I want to do it this way, and we're just arguing about it, arguing back and forth, back and forth. So you have to come up with a plan and then execute that plan and make sure you're on the same page. I love it when you and I say, so one kid will come and ask me for something, and this is classic. Of course, we all did it as a kid. Hey, can I get a ice cream? Sure, if your mom says fine, and then you say no, and then you're like, Dad said yes, and then you go back and forth. And what the kid is doing, obviously, they're just trying to get the ice cream, but that can be very unpleasantly divisive between you and I, right? So we have regular daily check-ins. Hey, what did you say to the kid?
Yeah.
Let's make sure and we
don't
be on
get
the same
mad
page
at
right
each
now.
other about it. Like that's our kind of our go-to is teamwork about it versus getting mad. What does the sunlight think it's doing?
I'm not sure.
It's impeding on our.
Oh, our words are so good. But what that also does, it strengthens our bond. Like, hey, I respect Melanie's her take on this, and she respects mine as well.
Right.
Evidenced by. We ask each other all the time.
But
it's
I want
not my way that is the highway.
Yeah, back to the talk to your spouse about your kids' differences. One of the reasons this is also important is that you will be blind to your own preferences. You won't know. For example, for years, the way I spoke to our kids was very sort of sarcastic, negative. I would point out a flaw. I would find what was wrong and whatever, right? So that was, I essentially trained them to do that, but I'm blind to it because I'm so used to it. Like I'm acclimated to that type of behavior. That's what I grew up in.
Right.
And then the kids would start behaving in a way that would start to make me mad. And Seth was like, doy, you taught them this.
Exact.
Like, why are you even mad about that? But had we not had conversations about like, look, our kids are different. And this one kid over here, for example, our oldest kid can hear me be negative, but not parrot that behavior. Our middle kid hears me be negative and he's like, that gives me free reign. I can say whatever I want.
You said it. And then guess what? He gets in trouble for that from me and from you.
That's exactly right. You have to scoot over. You have to stop pushing me out of the frame or I'm going to literally die. But anyway, so yes, it's hugely important to talk to your kids about your difference, about their difference.
Our kids are dramatic too. Can you imagine where that one comes from?
And again, because we'll be blind to the things that we do and we'll be hypersensitive to the things that we don't like. And our partner, hopefully, if you have a good relationship with your spouse, will help bring clarity and vice versa. You bring clarity for your partner, they bring clarity for you. And that's why you talk to your spouse about your differences between your kids.
That's right. So number 3, and we kind of alluded to this a little bit, have a plan of how you work and speak to each kid. Right? So I want to speak in a similar way to our daughter like you do. What? Whoa. Her language is dancing and being nuts, right? So I can definitely speak that language all day long. But I'm not saying, oh, well, okay, mom said it's okay, then I can talk to her that way. I'm not saying that. I'm saying how we parent, how we teach, how we love on her. Very specific to, but so she's not getting mixed messages. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm saying, hey, Hattie, you can't have the ice cream. It's 9:00 and we're gonna go to bed in 15 minutes. So I'm telling her, and if Melanie's saying, okay, well I'm gonna parent it too. No, you can't have that ice cream. We're going to bed early. You should know this. I told you last night.
Right.
That is obviously very different. So we want to be on the general same wavelength. So our kid isn't getting mixed messages. This happens a lot also in private practice when I would get kids from divorced families. And when the parents are still fighting and stuff, one kid is hearing a message from mom, another kid is hearing a message from dad, and that just confuses the heck out of kids.
Right.
And then causes sometimes, not all the time, maybe some other maladaptive reaction down the road, right? So have a plan of how you work and speak to each kid. I gave an example. I want to put you on the spot, and you give an example of how we do that. A plan, say with Tough.
Oh, well, I mean, a perfect example is we know and we adore all of our children. They are all just very different. And Tough is like a defiant, not defiant. What's the word we always say? Not obstinate. Like if you come up with that, what's the word?
He is contrarian.
Contrarian. So if you say the sky is really blue, he'll be like, I see shade, like lots of gray in that. And there's like pale yellow. Don't you see that? And you're like, oh. And it's very, it's a lot. And so we have learned, I think it was actually you that first saw it, that you were like, if you tell him a very specific thing, like, don't put your glasses on the buh, he will come back with, I didn't put them there. Like it is an invitation for being contrary.
Right. So you can't set them up. So, and this comes from your family of origin. We've talked about this a lot. You say, hey, why did you do that? Like it can be your phraseology and then also your tone.
Right.
Only sets the person, not only a kid, but the person up for defense.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So one thing that we have learned to do is just go with it.
Right.
Oh yeah, it is yellow, isn't it?
Well, but that back to number 3, like have a plan for how we speak to each kid. Like that.
So that's
that's our plan. Is like we have agreed we're going to both try our best not to say these sort of complete, end of sentence statements like that is this, because it only invites more arguing.
That's right.
And I will say though, this is a constant, even within one conversation, we will remind one another kindly if we're falling off course, if one of us is communicating in a way that we see is not helpful. We are constantly sort of doing checks and balances with each other, and think of it like like pilots on an airplane.
Right.
Like you're both have the same mission to get to the same place. So actually, that's a really important kind of insight there. Some parents, their mission or their objective or their goal is, I'm going to make this kid feel like trash right now. I'm going to let them know how mad I am. That's not the same thing as I really just want my kid to floss and go to bed. Right? That's not the same thing. But if you don't understand what your sort of joint mission is as parents, one of them's going to just be mad, flinging angry around.
I'm thinking about this.
I'm just so glad that you cut me off. I love it. So
we didn't have a plan for that.
No, we didn't. But it's important to know as a team what your goal is and where you're going. So we check in very, very frequently, constantly. And now it's not a point of tension where in the past it was like, why are you telling me how to parent?
Right. And I was thinking, as we talk more about family, it is really a reflection of who you are as a person and what the kind of the state of the marriage to some degree, right?
Oh,
and
yeah,
on Anatomy of Marriage, we always talk about, hey, you, individual, have to be at a certain level before you can have a marriage that's a certain level, right? So we say, hey, get happy, be happy, no matter what your spouse does or doesn't do, right? I know that was the pivot point in our marriage, big time, okay? I have to take ownership of all my stuff and whatever. And I believe in parenting, it's much the same way. Like, I have to be present. I have to be not checked out in order to be a good parent because the kid, just like marriage, it just exposes stuff. It exposes the cracks and maybe even the flaws that you didn't know you had, and you have to be open and willing to go, oh, goodness, okay, that's a crack. That's a huge flaw. Let me be willing to work on that. So that's why we wanted to give you 3 quick tips, and I'm going to reiterate those right now. Number 1, all your kids are not the same. You have to know that. You have to accept that first off. Number 2, talk to your spouse about your kids' differences. Make a plan with your kids. Be on the same page. Hey, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? You mean? Right. And then number 3, have a plan of how you work and speak to each kid, because just as different as you are, all the colors of the rainbow, your kid is that way too. So we need to stop treating each kid like they're just a clone, even if they're twins. We have friends who have twins and even triplets, and they're like, yes, they are night and day difference, although all 3 of them were born on the same day, right? We are individual people. Just because we're an adult doesn't mean that we're less of a person as we were when we were a kid. So make sure that you keep that in mind.
And I want to say a couple of ways to identify how your kids are different, like a couple tools that you could use. You can use the Enneagram. So there's Enneagram tests for kids. I actually just did one for Mariner, and he is a 1, which is really funny because I thought he was a 7, and I'm like, that doesn't seem quite right. Then I had him redo it because I had him do it years ago. So he redid it now as a 13-year-old, and it said 1, really strong, and then 7 is like the next number he might have been.
Interesting.
So that was really helpful. But again, different things motivate different people. So and that can be, you can figure that out through the Enneagram number or DISC assessment tests or Myers-Briggs, whatever, or just observing your children. But everyone has different intrinsic motivators. Like, I might really want to feel loved and special. Hashtag Enneagram 4, like tough is like the individualist. I feel like I have to be just like the most amazing of everything. And so what motivates him is not going to be anything the same as what motivates Hattie, who her primary motivation is like, how many people can I make smile? Here we go. I'm going to dance. Like, that's her world. Right. If she can make her bed and make you laugh, what's missing? Nothing.
She loves it.
Nothing's missing.
Maybe she's a 9.
I don't know. But anyway, you can use the Enneagram, you can use Myers-Briggs or whatever, or just like ask your kids, like, what makes you the happy? Like, talk to your kids like they're humans, because they are. Just like hashtag your children are humans too.
So I hope this is helpful. Please remember to email any questions that you have at hello@anatomyofmarriage.com and specify if it's for Anatomy of Sex, which is our other show, Anatomy of Marriage, or Anatomy of Family. And if you're listening right now, moms with kids, dad with kids, if you're listening in the car, ask your kids some questions, and that would be super fun to start answering kid listener questions.
Oh, that would be so fun.
And then we'll answer it, or maybe we can even have our kid answer it. So email us at hello@anatomyofmarriage.com. You guys, remember to rate this show. Rate it, review it, share it with your friends, share it with your mama, with your grandma. Send it to your mom. Say, hey, Mom, I wish you did this.
Yeah, people don't care what we say about our show, but they really care about what you say about our show. So if you've shared our show, thank you. If you're a Patreon and you support our show, triple thank you. And if you've written in a question, thank you.
That's right. Okay, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Catch us next week.
All right, bye.
All right, bye.